see the numbers moving.
Quiet on set.
My door's closed.
Okay. Who's that? There's a special guest today.
Yes. See if we can peek his face in there.
It's very close.
So this is Juan. He's from Icarus Independent Productions. He's joining us in our Stoa. Welcome, Internet. Welcome to our Stoa once again with new and improved lighting. Again, courtesy of Icarus Independent. Today, we're going to be covering courage as the third, principle or virtue for Stoicism. This one is going to lead into justice, which is kind of the big one that we're going to cover in the next video. But this is kind of foundational to something that's, again, very important to us. And I think very important to everyone in today's day and age. I think when it's easy to be complicit with what's popular or what's maybe like politically expedient, courage, to give an easy early blanket definition, is to not use the word in the definition, having the ability to hold fast to what's important and to what's right. Again, when we talk about temperance before this, and we talked about wisdom before that, innately in some way, shape, or form that there's a right and wrong answer to a specific solution. If you think about, if my hand was on fire and I couldn't put that fire out and it's either going to consume my whole body or not, the right answer here is to cut it off. They would suck and it's going to be painful, but ultimately that's what I need to do, or just allow my life to terminate. Not everything's that serious. Clearly everyday things aren't that serious, but it would be easy for me to sit there and talk about my coworker, for instance. If everyone's jumping on the bandwagon about this coworker who I might have a very amicable relationship with, again, courage in the face of that would not to join in this mob mentality of sitting there and steamrolling a coworker, and that's a simple example kind of for everybody, but it's also the idea of if I'm sitting at a red light, nobody's watching. There's no consequence to me driving through this thing, but doing the right thing in that moment, as silly analogy as that is, I think requires courage. And it's not just to everyone else, but to yourself. And I think to the internal identity that you're making for oneself. Because if you start to, again, allow these, we'll call them acts of cowardice, or easy acts of, again, hedonistic cowardism, to go by and to allow themselves to happen in these smaller events, they're going to start leaking into the bigger decisions that you make in life, to other relationships and things of that nature. What does it mean to you to be courageous?
Man, I tell you what, this whole thing, to me, took a lot of courage.
Sure,
You're used to being on camera and kind of like putting things out there. Dude, for me, like before this, I had very little social media presence, little to none. And being on camera for me has always been very like, I've never been one to like have my picture taken or video recorded, or let alone to put anything on the internet. So like this one hits home real heavy for me, because just by doing this, I feel like I'm facing kind of a big fear of mine. And I think you can't talk about courage without talking about fear. Because obviously I think that's the most general felt emotion by people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think fear is something that everyone can kind of describe in their own way and agree on. Everyone has times that they're fearful of something, maybe you're afraid of spiders and you're afraid of snakes, but you still feel the same emotion of fear. And I think when you really start talking about courage, it really just comes down to like facing that. So for me, being on camera freaks me out. I don't like it. I mean, now that we've posted a few videos, I'm getting used to it. But the initial like setting this up and doing the video and recording, like that was me facing a big fear of mine. And I think that relates really well to Stoicism, because not only is it like facing your fear, but it's also, like you said, just doing the right thing. So I think talking about these virtues, talking about the 4 virtues and like using them and living by them, courage is a huge one, because if you don't have enough courage to stand up for those virtues or stand up for what you believe in, stand up for what you're trying to portray, if you just give in to the person that wants to knock you down online or talk crap about you or whatever, if you don't have enough courage to defend what you're standing up for, then they all mean nothing.
Yeah.
They're all pointless. Because if you're not going to defend it, if you're not going to stand up for it, if you're not going to live by it, which is courageous in itself, it really means nothing.
Well, I like that you brought up fear. And a lot of people, again, there's a cool quote, I don't know if it's a movie or something, but they say, like, courage isn't the absence of fear, but it's the ability to walk through fear and still accomplish whatever goal that you have in front of you. And I think nowadays the popular word for fear is anxiety. A lot of
100%.
people will say, that this, I have an anxiety about this, or I have an anxiety. It's just fear.
Well, they go hand in hand.
Yeah, I was going to say
because when you're fearful, you get anxious. Like, you're in a fearful situation, you have anxiety about that situation. And I think if you kind of dive into fear a little bit, you're talking about either a lack of confidence or past experiences that you're afraid of reliving. So, and I think that's where this was for me. I'm not confident. It's not public speaking, but it's pretty close. And I've never been confident in public speaking. And then if you want to talk about past experiences, in school, I hated it. I hated standing up in front of the class and talking. And but a lot of it was lack of confidence, or I just didn't really know what I was talking about. I was just kind of winging it. So I think facing those two things and realizing that having confidence in yourself makes a lot of situations a lot easier. You might still be afraid of a spider if it's in the room. But if you're confident enough to be like, you know what? I'm just going to get it out of my house or out of my view, and then it won't affect me anymore. Yeah, you might still be afraid of it, but if you just remove it from the situation and just have a little bit of confidence in yourself that you can do that, then I think you're kind of really stepping into that courageous mindset.
I think there's two other parts to that with fear. One of which, and you already talked about it, your past, and then maybe some anxieties or lack of confidence. The other one's the fear of the unknown. I think a lot of it, and we're going to cover this, we're going to go into other companies, and as part of our plan, I guess for the future, for the rest of the channel, is we're going to approach people that are exhibiting some amount of this courage in it. But again, with the past, with Corona that hit and stuff like that, and even before then, when you have the housing bubble crisis, or again, Y2K for everyone that was alive.
It's very unknown.
Bit of idiocy that happened. But
we were all waiting for the world to shut down.
Oh, for sure, and I think that, again, before you go and, walk out your front door, you have no idea what that day's going to hold. And that's something that everyone has to face no matter what. I don't care if you're a kindergartner all the way up into, a retiree. But if you look at putting yourself out there for relationships or for promotions, we're specifically going after business owners later to talk to them about it. Entrepreneurial endeavors are got to be terrifying. Huge. There's zero security in any of that. I have
starting it takes an immense amount of courage.
Yeah. And then, again, even for this was a pretty sizable investment for us. And we believed that it was an important enough thing in social media that was like, hey, if I don't see enough voices saying this, it's not going to proliferate. So we kind of took it upon ourselves and to the people that we're going to involve in this project to say, hey, let's put something out there that's more positive and less divisive. And let's talk about, again, what's going to bring us more together than not. And again, there's going to be backlash to that. There's going to be people, I'm sure.
Well, this ties into social media, I think, more than anything. Yeah. Because like you talked about someone talking about a coworker and you having the courage not to join in the conversation, let's be honest. People say some crazy outlandish things online and people jump in because they feel like they're semi-anonymous online. I think the ultimate courage is either standing up for what you believe in and not backing down from that no matter the type of backlash you're talking about, whether it be comments or tweets or whatever. I don't know. I'm still not very social media savvy.
And I think what's awesome about it is, again, just to kind of wrap this into Stoicism in general, if your perspective or what you feel passionate enough amount to talk about is founded in wisdom and it's founded with this idea of temperance in mind, you should have the courage to stand up for it because it's right, or at least it's righteous in perspective. That this I know is not going to be harmful, or if it's going to be harmful, it's not harmful to the greater good. And we're going to kind of talk about this as far as courage is concerned. But like all of these things work interconnectedly, and that courage is just holding fast to that idea of, yes, this, this idea might be a little controversial, or this idea might not give me likes on social media or subscribers there, but also might not win me favor at work. But I know it's right. And I know that this is going to be not just good for me, but good for everybody if they can start to adopt whatever this perspective it is that I'm representing, or whatever idea that I'm trying to represent or proliferate. If you think about, we everyone kind of teases the Mormon kids that'll get on the bicycles and they take a whole year out of their lives to go sit there, ride around and talk to people about Jesus. They say, well, this is, our idea and our philosophical, but like, in a way, that takes courage. You can almost respect that these people believe fundamentally in something enough about themselves that they want to proliferate that to other people.
Yeah.
In essence, without the white shirts and black ties and the bicycles.
Well, you can relate that to any kind of lifestyle.
That's what I mean.
That's just one that...
If you truly believe that this is beneficial for people and will make their lives better, why wouldn't you want to share that with some people? And I think that, again, it is a bit of a coward's way out to just sit there and be like, I'm just going to be happy in my little thing and not talk to anybody about it.
Right.
Kind of branching courage out, not just from having self-courage and doing it, there's the other part, and to go away from fear just being about the unknown. I think there's also fear about the actual consequence of something.
Right.
And I think courage, the most stereotypical version of courage is courage in the face of danger, or courage in the face of what is going to be a very negative consequence. Mm-hmm. In football, they'll say, you got to put your, body on the line to go help your teammate. In the military, you got to fight for the guy right next to you. And a lot of these people that play, I don't want to call them high stakes games, but they're in a more high risk environment. I think about just a nurse in a hospital. Yeah. If I know that the person that I'm taking in has an extremely communicable disease, it's incredibly deadly, I still have a job to do there.
Mm-hmm. You might take more precaution.
Yeah, sure.
But you're not going to say, no, I'm not going to save your life.
Yeah.
Because something might happen to me.
Anybody that has gotten this far in this video, thank you. But anybody that gets an opportunity, look at Medal of Honor winners. Whether they get it posthumously or not, they have this cool book. My wife had it that was chronicling a lot of these Medal of Honor winners. And every single Medal of Honor winner didn't do something just by themselves. What they did affected somebody else.
Right.
What they did, and there was one specifically, I think the guy was a tank commander, or he was part of a tank crew. Mm-hmm. And his tank got hit by a shell, and the whole thing caught on fire, and he got blasted off of the tank. Then he looks back at the tank, and tanks have fuel in it. This thing's just ablaze. Whole thing's on fire. This guy who could have just easily walked away from this scenario, been like, well, cool, I'm lucky to be alive. Let me go walk off, looked back, and realized there was other people in that tank that were now cooking alive. He walked back into that tank, pulled out his entire tank crew, which survived, and that killed him. He died from having God knows how many awful burns all over his body.
Yeah.
But that is somebody who, again, it's a simple way to sit there and label it as courage. Yes, he was brave, he was courageous, but it's also, he had to make he had a decision. He stood there and said, wow, this is really going to hurt. This is really going to suck. But there's people that are depending on me to do it. We, as mortal human beings here, are very rarely, if ever, going to be stuck in that situation. But I think you can take some real inspiration from somebody like that and be like, why wouldn't that be the standard I wouldn't want to hold myself up to? Why wouldn't that be, the goal I have in mind for myself? I hope that in that situation, I can act that courageously. And if that's the standard that I'm holding myself to, and again, the Stoic mindset will hold these people as champions, of their philosophy, then I'm probably going to do pretty good in everyday life. If there's a guy that can walk quite literally through fire for his fellow man, he didn't care who they were. He might not even like some of those guys that were in there. They might have grown up to be, jerks and abusive husbands, but he said that person is a life in there, and that life matters. And I want to be there to put myself and potentially, again, to him, ultimately to death, to defend that person and defend that person's right to life. I think it's a really important lesson to take away from courage specifically. It's not, there's this extra bit of value to courage that I think is at the height of courage. The pinnacle of the courageous perspective is really almost valuing others more than you would value yourself. The more gifted or the more privileged you are in a specific situation, that I'm an able-bodied person, I should be able to stand up for those that maybe cannot stand up for themselves. And to have the courage to do it, not because you're going to get any points. That guy died. He didn't get to sit there for the ceremony to put it on there. He didn't get likes on Facebook. Nobody started a GoFundMe for him. He did it because there was lives on the line. And that's really foundationally where I think Stoicism makes itself unique, and that it's not for everyone else. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And then again in this, and I'm aware enough that we're doing this on social media, and we are on audio.
And we're back.
To
our Stoa.
To our Stoa.
I mean, we can address it.
Yeah.
Our battery died.
Yes, our battery died.
We're still new at this.
So despite...
I'm courageous enough to admit that.
So we're at before the malfunction.
I want to piggyback off what you were saying about the Medal of Honor winners. It doesn't even need to be that extreme.
No.
I think just being courageous enough to tell the truth in every situation, that takes a lot. It's a lot to not jump on board with something or just agree with someone or, hurt someone's feelings. But if you're telling the truth, well, then you're exhibiting a ton of courage, because the truth is always going to be the right thing to either tell someone or exhibit yourself or talk about. And, it's not that easy to do, especially in today's world. I mean, you're talking about, you might look bad, you might piss people off, you might, rub people the wrong way. But if you're trying to live through these virtues, I think ultimately it comes down to having the courage to be truthful in every situation. And it's not, telling the truth to a fault and to, make people feel bad or prove that you're right about something. But it's a hard thing to do, especially in like a group setting or a social media setting, not just to be the guy that agrees with everyone else, especially if it's something that you really believe in, like you were talking about. And then also, putting yourself at risk for another person, whether that be physical harm, like the Medal of Honor recipient, or whether it be your reputation, or whether it be your social media presence, or whether it be just your feelings, like putting your feelings on the line just to stand up for someone else because it's the right thing to do. It's tough. It's hard. I think everyone would agree that that's a hard thing to do, especially in everyday life.
I think it's important. I think that's something everyone falls short on. I don't think there's anybody watching this or in this room, the three of us, but that haven't fallen short in that one state. And I think we're not sitting there telling everybody that they're a failure at life, but as long as you're aware, and as long as you're working against that and constantly working to better yourself, and
being aware is huge.
Yeah. I think courage has a lot to do with self-awareness and just understand, because there's certain limitations. Again, if I gotta go, climb a mountain with 100 pounds on my back, or somebody's life's going to depend on it to do that very thing, and I've got a bad left knee and I don't work out enough to do it, I'm not going to try to put myself in that position where someone else is relying on me. Put yourself down. No.
You'll get there.
Oh, one day. But I wouldn't ask someone to rely on me when that, and I would have the courage to say, no, I'm not good enough for that. I know that I'm incapable of doing that, and I don't want to hurt someone because of my lack of ability. Let someone else who cares enough or is in a good enough position to do it. And sometimes you are that person. Yeah, I have the skill set, or I have the patience, or I have the physical ability to go do X, Y, Z. Then it's incumbent on me to take that responsibility. But I think, conversely, it's to know and to be aware. And again, part of it does require that amount of courage to say, yeah, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I don't want to give you a promise I can't fulfill. Yeah. And I don't want someone to rely on me.
Especially when it's someone close to you.
Sure,
that's
absolutely.
The hardest.
Yeah.
Hardest thing of all.
So to piggyback on that, you can edit me out of this if you want. I want to get your perspective on having the courage to be wrong, admit that you're wrong, potentially learn something new.
Oh, sure.
Huge.
I think
Admitting you're wrong is, I think, probably one of the hardest things, especially if it's something that you've like projected out. Like, let's say you make a post about something and you're like, this is this and I believe this and here's the reasons why. And then you get factual evidence that you're wrong. Man, going back and admitting that, come on. You've gotta be like, for lack of a better term, like a real big person to be able to go back and admit that you're wrong and then kind of like go back on your stance a little bit, and you really don't see it. Like, you don't see that type of actions from people.
And we covered this a bit in Wisdom about that your perspective kind of has to be founded in fact and founded in some sort of logical progression. But like, right. I think we're courage, and this is why it's really great. I'm glad you made this point. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Icarus Independent, for your input in today's video. But I think that, and it's self-awareness is kind of all ties into that being wrong's kind of a good thing, and recognizing that you're wrong about something is a good thing because growth comes from that. If you think about you're exercising your moral compass to realize that, hey, I failed here somehow, I stumbled here somehow, and now from here on out, I can move and act as a more well-informed person, or a person that can now proliferate a more correct version of my set of beliefs. It might be a complete fundamental change of who you are, but if you're faced with the fact, they talked about if aliens came to the Earth and that can completely fundamentally change. No, it's just to be weird, but like,
hey, man, it's a pretty hot topic right now.
Yeah, but I mean, if that happened, you would have to fundamentally look at yourself and say, well, us as humanity now, we're not alone. I can't act like this little green man's not in front of me. I can't deny.
They might be gray.
But you can't deny that truth. Same thing I think would go as I've gotten older. My feelings have changed drastically on a lot of stuff. Some of the stuff that I was super fired up about when I was maybe 16 is not the case now that I'm 30. And part of that, it's
high school, college, outside of college, first job to now having a career. If you're not changing throughout those phases of your life, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough that most of my personal friends don't all share the exact same beliefs or foundations that I have. But we do agree to respect each other enough to confront each other. If I start saying something real wild and out,
but it's to have a conversation.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's like, hey,
point.
I love you enough to potentially damage our relationship if it means that I think that you're going to be better for it.
And that takes
courage. And I think that on the other side of the fence, it takes courage to accept that, to be the big enough person to say, yes, I was wrong.
Well, yeah. Let's piggyback that on fear. Who's not afraid of being wrong? Like, who's not? Yeah. Who doesn't have that like internal fear of like putting something out there and then being wrong? And then who's not afraid of, let's say, rejection? Like, say that you do put yourself out there and you're courageous enough to put your opinion out there or your stance on something. We're all afraid of rejection. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
You can be rejected by your peers, by your family, by your friends, by social media. The fear of rejection is always going to be there. But you have to have enough courage to, we keep saying it, but like, live by your principles, live by the virtues, and be strong enough to project them and talk about them with other people. And like you said, if you started talking something crazy and I didn't agree with it, yeah, I might be a little apprehensive to bring it up to you, but if it was truly something that I thought was like detrimental to you, we would have a conversation about it. But I think it has to be a conversation and not an argument.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing right now is people just want to argue. Just have a conversation and accept the fact that you're not right about everything. Accept the fact that there might be another point of view for the exact same thing that you're talking about.
One of the last notes that we kind of put down for this, or at least I put down for this, is the question is it worth the risk? And again, you can tie in fear and all of this stuff into this one idea. Is it worth the risk? There's some logic applied to this. Please don't just fly off the handle. It's always worth the risk. Always do it. This is really where I think like a more nihilistic perspective and Stoicism really delineates. Like they really change from one another. It's not nihilism, so it's like whatever. Nothing matters. I'm just gonna do whatever makes me happy. It doesn't matter if it hurts people. Whatever. Stoicism rails against this idea, and it's the same thing with like hedonism. It's always worth the risk. Meth feels real good, so I'm just gonna keep doing it. There is some logic, and there is some, and again, that's why wisdom and temperance and moderation, all this other stuff is applied to this. But like, that there gets to be a point where every single decision we make has a risk assessment. Am I gonna go ask this girl out, or am I gonna go apply for this job promotion, or am I gonna go again be the entrepreneur, go open up the donut shop I always wanted to have, or whatever it is.
Start your own podcast.
Sure. Do you want to go make your own YouTube video and go deal with all of the nonsense that inquires or entails? It's an individual, journey for everybody. But I think that if the only thing separating you from doing it and not is the risk assessment of, is it worth the risk to do it? Was it the right thing to do? Is it going to be the best thing for everybody? And am I going to be happy with myself for making the decision regardless of the consequence? Then yes.
And are you passionate about it?
Yep.
Because if you're not passionate about something that you're doing, it's not going to last long. I think we've all experienced that in one way or another, whether it be, a relationship, a job, a hobby. You might get fired up about something and dive deep into it, and then a month later you're like, wow, this is such a chore. I have no enthusiasm for this anymore. So I think that's another key point to it all.
And I think that, again, it being worthwhile or not, or any of these things being worthwhile, kind of comes down to, it's got to check off a lot of these boxes. Am I an educated person in this topic, or am I capable of doing this thing that I'm asking myself to go do? And there's a lot that goes into making those decisions, but I think courage is honesty, really.
And it's foundational.
Yeah. And I think being honest with yourself, being honest with others, and then making those decisions regardless of the consequences, even if it's going to be potentially bad for you. And
or you're afraid of it.
Yeah. And I think allowing yourself to make life decisions and move through your life without being hampered by fear, and without being hampered by cowardice, really.
Mm-hmm.
That you'll be happier. It might not feel good all the time. It might
eventually it will.
Yeah, in the moment, this is all kind of delayed gratification. I think Stoicism, the whole principle of it is to invest in yourself or invest in the world around you for a better future.
Well, it's really about, it's not about living a day this way. It's about living your life this way to get a more fulfilling life.
And I think that's really the difference in between rules and like principles. Mm-hmm. Being courageous isn't a rule; it's a principle. Because sometimes it is, the right thing to retreat. Hey, let me walk away from this. This is not worth, the potential argument to have. This is my mom, not like my friend that I have. I'm having a relationship with.
That's a huge one.
Yeah. So
why argue when you can just walk away if there's no benefit from? Mm-hmm. And honestly, I don't think there's a benefit from arguing. I think there's a benefit from conversation. So if you can't have an actual conversation with someone, have enough courage to just walk away. Yeah. And no matter how that makes you look to the other person, or how that makes you feel, you might be super upset about a certain topic. But if it's not going to be beneficial in any way, shape, or form, and you have the courage to walk away, a day later, an hour later, eventually you're going to feel better about the whole situation than if you had stayed and got wrapped up in some combative kind of meaningless argument.
Mm-hmm. Where no one changes.
Exactly.
All you've done is create a little bit more hate in the world. Yes. I feel good about it.
Yeah, I think we covered this one pretty well. Yeah. So, as always, stay stoked, bro.